Welcome everyone to week number 2 in Science 200. So you should have gotten into your textbook by now and participated in the discussion board and chosen your topic already. So let's see what we've got going on. Every week I'll do a quick review of what you did the week before because all of this, of course, ties together. So last week we learned about the natural sciences, and they are not the social sciences, they're the natural sciences like biology and chemistry, physics, geology, astronomy, and environmental science. And you chose the one that you were most interested in and talked about that in the discussion board and how it may or may not have anything to do with the topic that you have chosen. We talked about how science works. I did in my video, and how that 7th grade version of that you learned about how science works is not exactly the correct one. It's a more simplified version, and it's much more complex than that. So I talked about that. The importance of revision is very important, and you will see that throughout this whole term. Because from week to week to week, you turn in an assignment, I grade it, I give you feedback, the next week you can fix whatever you need to fix. So that's a great advantage to building on the information and building on the feedback from week to week on your particular project. We learned about Alexander Fleming and penicillin. You know, microbiology is my favorite topic. And so you learned about the process of science by studying how he discovered something important, which he had to realize, and then he studied it to his completion, where he discovered penicillin, which of course we all know as an antibiotic. Other scientists took that a step further and figured out how to produce it, especially mass produce it. But Alexander Fleming discovered the first true antibiotic. And you should have chosen your research topic. Hopefully it's one of the ones that was in your chapter 1 in your Sumo web text. And if not, then you should have gotten that approved by me. And if you didn't, I may have some issues with it, and I'll be talking with you about it. This week, chapter 2, this is the most extensive reading that you will do for the term. And really the majority of your work this week is your Sumo web text readings. They're fairly long as far as readings go, especially in a web text. And I will say, someone like me did not write this. Like, scientists get to the point very quickly, and they don't put any flowering language in anything. We hardly ever use adjectives, in other words. But it is very interesting reading. I love this. This was all about public health, and I did public health for 11 years. So, I love public health. And I also love microbiology, and that relates to this too. So this was a cholera outbreak in London in the 1800s. So during this time, people moved from the countryside into the city because of the Industrial Revolution. That's where all the jobs were, and the higher paying jobs than living a farm life. So people were all crammed together in cities, and nobody knew how to make this work. How do you have good housing for this many thousands and thousands of people? How do you have clean water? How do you have sanitation, garbage pickup, all that sort of thing? Adequate food supplies, everything like that. And so during this time, things were inadequate, especially sanitation, and there were outbreaks of cholera. So cholera is produced by a species of bacteria called Vibrio cholerae, and it produces something called rice water stool. And this is basically your body just dumping out all the water in your body extremely quickly. And especially very susceptible people like babies and the elderly or somebody who's sick, you can die within 24 hours of developing cholera. And then perfectly healthy people died from cholera also. So the thought during this time, the whole disease infection process was thought to be caused by something called miasma. So miasma basically is stinky odors. And so you would smell these stinky odors, and that would tell you that a disease is being transmitted in the environment. And that's how they thought all diseases were transmitted. Now, of course, we know that's not true. Are some diseases transmitted through aerosol droplets? Absolutely. Hello, COVID. Don't we know that? How many of us wore masks during 2020, 2021, etc.? So we know that that's true, but are there other ways for diseases to be transmitted? Absolutely. And of course, we know that now. But they did not know that back in the 1800s, and they thought that all diseases were passed along through miasma. Now, some people didn't believe this. Some people thought that there were other ways that diseases would be transmitted. And Dr. John Snow, who is basically the hero of our reading for this week, thought that contaminated water was the way that people were developing cases of cholera. And so he had to go about proving this. Now, this was going against the grain. Nobody thought this was true. Well, was there access to water? Yes, there was. There were community wells. And where did that well water come from? The River Thames. So that's the main body of water that runs through the city of London, still does. So yes, there were wells where people could get water. The unfortunate thing was that their waste products were going into the River Thames also. So depending on where your water was being pulled from the River Thames, you were basically drinking sewage water sometimes, depending on the neighborhood. And this was a problem. And John Snow showed by mapping out cases of cholera, by mapping out where water came from and where sewage was going into the River Thames, he showed that it was actually contaminated water that was causing all these cases of cholera. And then new sanitation standards came into effect. And this is where we got a lot of our sanitation laws in England and in the United States and across the globe when we figured out that this was happening. This shows how science works. No one understood that water could be contaminated and spread disease. But Dr. John Snow, by collecting the data, and that's tremendously important, showed that water contamination was the way that cholera was being spread. So it's a very interesting read this week. You'll enjoy it, and you'll understand it. So that's very cool. And it's a great way to show you how science works. All right, then you are also going to work further on your topic. So you're going to develop a research question. You've chosen a topic: GMOs, electric vehicles, commercial nuclear energy, I don't know, genetic engineering, whatever all the rest of the topics are, ocean acidification, biodiversity conservation. You've chosen a topic, but now you got to figure out a question to ask that you want to answer through your research. And it can be a fairly big question. Yes, it can for this round of your topic work. So yeah, it can be a big question. You know, something along the lines of, are electric vehicles as green as everybody says they are? How fast is ocean acidification happening? Or maybe what is the effect of ocean acidification on marine life? Or, you know, it can be a really big question like that. So see what you can come up with having to do with your particular topic. And you will be putting that into, you'll be putting it into the web text first of all, but then you'll be making a document using the template in the textbook and uploading that into Brightspace. I read those and I grade those. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you have as your research questions that you come up with on your topic. You should start researching your topic. Now, there are lots of ways to do this. You can go into Google and just do a Google search. If you do that, you will get bazillions of hits, no matter what you type in, right? So you don't want to do that. We want scientific journal articles. We want scientific information. This is a science class. So you want scientific information. So I give you some suggestions here. First of all, start off with the Shapiro Library that you have access to here at SNHU. It is a wonderful resource. One reason for this, and I use it because this is a great feature of it, you have access to so many full text articles that you don't have to pay for. The university pays for access to all of this information. If you use the other two databases that I'm going to mention, you can usually get to the abstract, which is the synopsis of the whole article, but you won't be able to get to the full text article most of the time. Shapiro Library, you usually can. So use the Shapiro Library. Do searches. You're going to have to narrow down your search. I'm telling you now, you can't just put in ocean acidification. Even in the Shapiro Library, you're going to come up with thousands of sources. And I'll be talking more about how to do more targeted searches. That'll be coming up. But you should start looking now. Shapiro Library, Google Scholar, totally different from Google because it's the science database for the Google search engine. And it's great. I use it too. PubMed is another database. Most of scientific articles are in PubMed. And you think, well, it's just medical articles. No, it's not. It's science. So use PubMed too. Like I said, Google Scholar and PubMed, you may not be able to get to the whole article, but you usually can get the abstract. So at least you know you can figure out what's going on in the research. So try those three to help you do your searches. Okay? Notice there are no discussion board postings for week 2. There are for week 3, so you got discussion board postings coming up next week, but not in week 2. You're mainly working on your topic research question and your Sumo web text with all that information about Jon Snow and cholera in London. Tip of the week, break up your assignments into manageable pieces. That's going to be important this week. Like I said, that's a lot of reading in the textbook this week. So break it up into sections. You know, if you got 15 minutes sitting around waiting on a dentist appointment, you can read one of those sections in 15 minutes and answer a couple of questions. If you've got a lunch break at work and you want to get some of your work done, spend 20 minutes doing some of your textbook work. If you have a break, you're making dinner at home, and you got a little break, you're waiting on something to cook in the oven, sit down for 15 or 20 minutes, 30 minutes if you got that much time, and work on some of your work. So break up your assignments, especially the longer ones, into manageable pieces. That helps. It sure helps me. I do that too. All right. They're my puffins in Scotland. I love my puffins. Let me know if you need anything. I'm here to answer questions for you. If something's not clear, if you have no idea what's going on, if you have some problem, please let me know. m.sigmon@snhu.edu. I will be glad to help you. I will be glad to explain anything to you or point out directions to go in if you need that. All right. With that being said, I hope that you have a wonderful week this week.